I woke up at 3 in the morning last week and couldn't stop thinking about a Sherman tank that should have stayed dead. That's the thing about being 92. Sleep doesn't come easy anymore. And when it does, the memories come with it. This particular memory, though, it's been sitting in my chest for 79 years, and I'm not sure why it decided to show up now. Maybe because I'm running out of time to tell it. Maybe because I finally understand what it meant. It was December of '44, and we were somewhere in eastern France. I say somewhere because half the time we didn't know exactly where we were. The snow was coming down hard, the kind that gets inside your boots and stays there. I was 20 years old, a corporal in the 3rd Armored Division, and I'd been in Europe long enough to know that nothing ever went the way they told us it would. We'd pushed through hedgerow country in Normandy, seen things that made me old before I had any right to be, and now we were headed toward Germany. Everybody knew it. Nobody wanted to say it out loud. Our tank, we called her Beatrice, had been with us since August. She wasn't the fastest Sherman, wasn't the newest, but she'd kept us alive through situations where she had no business doing so. Our crew was 5 men. Me, I was the gunner. Tommy Reed from Ohio was our driver, barely 19 and always talking about his girl back home. Frank Kowalski, the loader, never talked about anything, just did his job and smoked cigarettes when we had them. Our assistant driver was a kid named Jimmy Price, 17, but said he was 18 when he enlisted. And then there was Sergeant Marcus Webb, our tank commander. Marcus was 26, which made him ancient to us, and he'd been in North Africa before France. He had this way of looking at you when things got bad, like he was calculating whether you'd break or hold. Most of the time, he decided you'd hold, and somehow that made it true. We'd been moving through this forest for 2 days, supporting infantry that kept getting pinned down by German positions we couldn't quite locate. The trees were so thick that air support couldn't help much, and the snow made everything look the same. On the 3rd day, we rolled into a clearing that opened up near a small village. I don't remember the name, might not have ever known it. The place looked abandoned, just a few stone buildings with their roofs half caved in and snow piling up against the walls. Marcus had us stop at the edge of the tree line. He was up in the turret, scanning with his binoculars, and the rest of us just sat there in the cold metal belly of Beatrice, waiting. That's what war is mostly, waiting. Waiting to move, waiting to shoot, waiting to find out if you're going to make it through the next hour. Then we heard it, the sharp crack of an .88 German anti-tank gun. The sound came from somewhere in the village, and before Marcus could give an order, there was another crack and something hit the building to our left. Stone and snow exploded into the air. Marcus was shouting coordinates, and I was already traversing the turret, trying to find where the fire was coming from. Tommy had Beatrice moving, backing us into better cover, and Frank had a round loaded before I even called for it. We fired twice into the buildings where we thought the gun was hidden, but the .88 fired again, and this time it didn't miss. The round hit us on the right side, punched straight through our armor like it was paper. The sound inside a tank when you take a hit, there's nothing else like it. It's not just loud. It's like the air itself tears apart, and your bones feel it before your ears do. The world went white, then red, then black. I remember my face hitting something metal. I remember the smell, like burning oil, and something else I didn't want to identify. I remember somebody screaming, but I couldn't tell who. When I could see again, maybe 3 seconds later, maybe 30, the inside of Beatrice was full of smoke and the electrical systems were sparking. Jimmy was gone, just gone. The round had come through right where he sat. Frank was on fire, slapping at his jacket, and Marcus was yelling at us to get out. Tommy already had his hatch open and was pulling himself through. I grabbed Frank, shoved him toward the driver's compartment, and then I went up through the turret behind Marcus. We hit the snow and ran. You don't think about it, you just run. Behind us, Beatrice was burning, black smoke pouring out of her hatches, and I kept thinking she was going to explode. Shermans did that, got hit, caught fire, and the ammunition cooked off. They called them Ronsons after the lighter company. Lights first time, every time. Dark joke, but we told it anyway because if you didn't laugh, you'd lose your mind. We made it to the tree line, and the .88 kept firing, but at other targets now. There were 2 more Shermans in our platoon, and they were pulling back, trying to flank whatever was shooting at us. We just lay there in the snow, the 4 of us that were left, watching Beatrice burn. If you're still listening to my story, I'd appreciate if you'd hit that like button and subscribe. It means these memories won't be forgotten. Frank's hands were burned pretty bad, but he'd live. Marcus had taken some shrapnel in his leg, but didn't seem to notice. Tommy was crying, not loud, just tears running down his face while he stared at Beatrice. I didn't feel anything, not yet. That would come later. We fell back with the infantry to a position about a mile behind the tree line. There was a farmhouse there that hadn't been shelled too badly, and the battalion had set up a casualty collection point. Medics took Frank away to work on his hands, and somebody looked at Marcus's leg. Tommy and I just sat against a wall, not talking. That's when I met Lieutenant Bill Haynes. He wasn't supposed to be there. Haynes was with the maintenance company, one of the guys who fixed tanks when they broke down or took damage that wasn't catastrophic. He was maybe 30 years old, tall, thin, with glasses that were always dirty and a cigarette always in his mouth. He came walking up to where Marcus was sitting, looked at him and said, "I heard you lost Beatrice." Marcus just nodded, didn't trust himself to talk yet. Haynes looked at me and Tommy. "She burned to the frame?" I said, "She was still burning when we left. Probably nothing left now." Haynes took a drag on his cigarette, squinted at the sky like he was doing math in his head, and then said something I'll never forget. "I can fix her." Marcus laughed. Not a happy laugh. The kind you make when somebody says something so stupid you don't know how else to respond. "Fix her? Bill? She took an 88 through the side. Jimmy's dead. The interior's burned. She's done." Haynes shook his head. 88 went through clean, right? Didn't blow the turret off? "No," I said. "Came through the right side, went out somewhere near the engine deck, I think. But she's burned out inside. Electrical's fried. Controls are gone. But the chassis is intact," Haynes said. "Turret still turns." I thought about it. Was still turning when we bailed out. Haynes nodded like I'd just confirmed something he already knew. "Then I can fix her, get her running again." Tommy finally spoke up. "You're out of your mind." Haynes just smiled. "Probably, but I can do it. 12 hours. Give me 12 hours, and I'll have Beatrice back in the fight." Marcus was staring at him now, not laughing anymore. 12 hours? "Bill, it takes 12 hours to get spare parts requisitioned, let alone rebuild a tank that's been gutted." "I've got everything I need," Haynes said. "Been scrounging parts for weeks. Got a storage area full of equipment pulled off knocked-out Shermans. Wiring harnesses, control systems, radios, seats, everything. I've been waiting for a chance to prove what I can do." I remember thinking the man was insane. You couldn't just rebuild a combat tank in 12 hours. It wasn't possible. The manual said a major repair took days, sometimes weeks, depending on what was damaged. And Beatrice wasn't just damaged, she'd been killed. But Marcus, he got this look in his eyes. The same look he had when he was deciding whether you'd break or hold. He studied Haynes for a long moment, and then he said, "You're serious." "Dead serious," Haynes said. "But I need help. Can't do it alone." "What kind of help?" "Men who know Beatrice, men who can work fast. And I need the area secured so I can work without worrying about getting shot." Marcus looked at me and Tommy. "You two up for it?" I should have said no. Should have told him I wanted nothing to do with Beatrice ever again. Should have said I needed time to process the fact that Jimmy was dead and we'd barely made it out. But I didn't say any of those things. I just nodded. Tommy did too. That's how the three of us ended up following Lieutenant Haynes back toward that clearing at dusk, with 2 squads of infantry for security and a half-track full of equipment that Haynes had somehow scrounged together. Beatrice was right where we'd left her. The fire had burned itself out, and she sat there in the snow, black and dead-looking, like a monument to our failure. The Germans had pulled back from the village after our other tanks had flanked them, so the area was relatively quiet. Relatively. You could still hear artillery in the distance, and every now and then a machine gun would chatter somewhere off to the east. Haynes walked around Beatrice slowly, taking in the damage. The entry hole on the right side was about 3 inches across, edges peeled back like a blooming flower. The exit hole near the engine deck was bigger, maybe 6 inches, and you could see through the tank from one side to the other if you lined it up right. The hatches were still open, and smoke still drifted out, smelling like burned rubber and worse things. "All right," Haynes said, "let's see what we've got." He climbed up on Beatrice and dropped down through the turret hatch. I heard him moving around inside, heard him coughing from the residual smoke. When he came back out, his face was black with soot, but he was smiling. "It's bad," he said, "but it's doable." Tommy said, "You're insane." "Yeah," Haynes agreed. "Let's get to work." What happened over the next 12 hours, I still don't entirely understand. I've thought about it for 79 years, and it still doesn't make sense. Not the mechanical part, I mean. That part I can explain. It's the other part. The part about what it means when a man decides he's going to do something impossible and then just does it. that I've never quite figured out. First, Haynes had us strip out everything that was damaged. The seats were melted, the radios were fried, the wiring harnesses had burned through in a dozen places. The periscopes were cracked from the heat. The gun's recoil mechanism had taken shrapnel and was leaking fluid. We pulled it all out and threw it in a pile in the snow. Then Haynes started pulling parts out of the half-track. He had seats that had come from a Sherman that had been knocked out near St. Lo. He had a radio from another tank that had thrown a track and been abandoned. He had wiring harnesses, circuit boards, fuses, relays, all of it carefully labeled and organized. The man had been planning this. We worked under portable lights that the infantry set up, and Haynes moved through that tank like a surgeon, cutting away damaged sections and splicing in new ones. He showed me and Tommy how to route the new wiring, how to test each circuit before we buttoned it up, how to replace the fire-damaged insulation. We worked in the cold, our hands going numb, warming them every few minutes by the portable heater Haynes had brought. Around midnight, Haynes had me start working on the gun's recoil mechanism while he and Tommy focused on the engine. The round had passed close enough to the engine to damage some of the fuel lines and electrical connections, but the engine block itself was intact. Haynes bypassed the damaged sections, rerouted fuel lines, replaced sensors. I'd never done mechanical work like this before. I was a gunner. I knew how to shoot the gun, how to load it, how to perform basic maintenance. But Haynes, he just assumed I could figure it out, and somehow I did. He'd say something like, "See that connector? Needs to match the color code on the harness." And I'd figure out what he meant. If I got stuck, he'd come over, look at what I was doing, make a small adjustment, and move on. The infantry guys thought we were crazy. They sat in their positions around the perimeter, smoking cigarettes and watching us work on a dead tank in the middle of the night. A couple of them came over to watch for a while. One of them, a sergeant whose name I never got, said to Haynes, "You really think you can get this thing running?" Haynes didn't even look up from what he was doing. Not think, no. The sergeant shook his head and walked away. If you're still listening to my story, I'd appreciate if you'd hit that like button and subscribe. It means these memories won't be forgotten. By 3 in the morning, we'd replaced most of the damaged systems. The new wiring was in place. The new radio was installed. The gun's recoil mechanism was repaired. Haynes had me test the turret traverse, and it moved smoothly, the electric motor humming like nothing had ever happened. The gun elevated and depressed properly. The new seats were bolted down, the periscopes were replaced. Haynes was working on the engine, and I could hear him cursing softly, which was the first sign I'd seen that he was worried about anything. Tommy was helping him, handing him tools, holding lights. Around 4 in the morning, Haynes climbed out from the engine deck, wiped his hands on a rag and said, "All right, let's see if she'll start." Marcus had been watching from outside the whole time, sitting on an ammunition crate with his wounded leg stretched out. He limped over when he heard Haynes say that. Haynes climbed into the driver's position. We heard him going through the startup procedure, heard the starter motor engage, heard it crank once, twice, 3 times, nothing. He tried again, still nothing. Tommy said quietly, "Fuel pump?" Haynes tried a 3rd time. This time the engine coughed, sputtered, and then caught. The sound of that radial engine firing up, it was like hearing a dead man take a breath. Black smoke poured out of the exhaust for a few seconds, and then it cleared. The engine settled into a rough idle, then smoothed out. Haynes revved it a few times, listening. Then he shut it down, climbed out, and looked at Marcus. "She runs," he said. Marcus just stared at him. Haynes wiped his forehead, leaving a streak of grease. "Still need to test everything else. Radio, intercom, electrical systems. Need to load ammunition, check the gun, make sure the optics are aligned. Need to test fire the main gun and the machine guns, but the hard part's done." I looked at my watch. It was 4:30 in the morning. We'd been working for about 9 hours. Over the next few hours, as the sky started to lighten, we finished the job. We loaded ammunition, tested the radio and intercom, checked every system. Haynes had me fire the coaxial machine gun to make sure the mount wasn't damaged. We couldn't test fire the main gun without giving away our position to every German within 5 miles. But Haynes went through every part of the firing system and declared it functional. By 7 in the morning, Beatrice looked rough. She was scorched black in places, had holes in her armor, and smelled like burned wiring and fresh paint, but she was operational. At 7:30, with the sun just starting to burn through the winter clouds, Lieutenant Haynes stepped back from Beatrice, lit a cigarette, and said, "She's yours, Sergeant." Marcus walked around her once, slowly. He ran his hand over the patched holes, looked inside at the new equipment, and then he climbed up into the commander's position. He didn't say anything for a long moment. Then he keyed the intercom. "Driver, start her up." Tommy climbed into the driver's seat. The engine fired on the first try. "Gunner, turret check." I climbed into my position and ran through the turret systems. Everything worked. Marcus sat there in the commander's hatch, looking around at the forest, at the village, at the men who'd guarded us while we worked. Then he looked down at Haynes. 12 hours, Marcus said. "You said 12 hours. Haynes checked his watch. 11 hours and 40 minutes. Cut it close. Marcus laughed. A real laugh this time. "Bill, you're out of your goddamn mind." Haynes grinned. "Yes, sir, I am." We took Beatrice back into action that afternoon. Got assigned to support an infantry push toward a river crossing about 10 miles east. Beatrice performed perfectly. Every system Haynes had repaired or replaced worked exactly as it should. The engine ran smooth. The turret traversed without binding. The gun fired when I pulled the trigger. We stayed in Beatrice for the rest of the war. Pushed through the Siegfried Line in January, crossed the Rhine in March, went all the way to Czechoslovakia by May. She took more hits, had more repairs, but she never died again. We lost men. Frank got hit by shrapnel in February and was shipped home. Marcus took a bullet through the shoulder in March and kept fighting anyway. We got replacements, new guys who didn't know what Beatrice had been through, and we never told them. It was just our tank, nothing special, just doing her job. But I knew. Every time I climbed into that gunner's seat, I thought about Lieutenant Bill Haynes and what he'd done in that clearing. I thought about the fact that this tank should have been dead, should have been just another piece of scrap metal left in a French forest, but instead she was still fighting because one man decided it was possible. I think about that now, at 92, when everything hurts and I can't remember what I had for breakfast, but I can remember every detail of that night. I think about how we decide what's impossible and what's not, and how sometimes the difference between those two things is just one person who refuses to accept the answer everyone else has already agreed on. If you're still listening to my story, I'd appreciate if you'd hit that like button and subscribe. It means these memories won't be forgotten. Haynes got a Bronze Star for it eventually, though not for another 3 months, and even then most people didn't really understand what he'd done. The citation said something about extraordinary dedication to duty and technical proficiency under combat conditions, which was true but didn't really capture it. He'd done something impossible, and the Army gave him a medal that said he'd done a good job. I saw him a few more times before the war ended. He was always working on something, always had some project going where he was trying to prove that the manuals were wrong, that things could be fixed faster or better or differently than anyone thought. He didn't do it for recognition. He did it because he believed it could be done, and that was enough. We got separated after the war. Marcus went back to Pennsylvania. Tommy went home to Ohio. I ended up in New York for a while, then out to California. I lost track of Haynes completely. Didn't even know his first name was William until I saw it on that Bronze Star citation. We just called him Haynes or Lieutenant, and that was enough. I tried to find him a few times over the years. Wrote to the Veterans Administration in the 70s, but they couldn't help. Tried again when the internet became a thing and my grandson showed me how to search for people online. Never found him. Don't know if he made it home, don't know if he's still alive, don't know anything. He just disappeared back into civilian life like most of us did and took his impossible accomplishments with him. But I think about him, especially lately. Especially when I wake up at 3 in the morning and can't get back to sleep and start remembering things I thought I'd forgotten. There's something about watching a man do the impossible that changes you, not in a big dramatic way. Not like in the movies where there's a speech and music and everything changes forever. It's quieter than that. It's just this small voice in the back of your head that says, maybe the rules aren't as fixed as you thought. Maybe the answer isn't always no. Maybe the thing everyone says can't be done just hasn't been done yet. I carried that with me after the war. When I was building houses in California and everybody said you couldn't get a foundation poured in winter, I figured out how. When I was raising my kids and people said you couldn't work full-time and be present for them, I made it work. When I was diagnosed with cancer in 1998 and the doctor said I had maybe a year, I decided that wasn't acceptable. And here I am, 28 years later, still breathing. I'm not saying I'm special. I'm not saying I did anything remarkable. I'm just saying that watching Lieutenant Bill Haynes rebuild a dead tank in 12 hours taught me that the word impossible is usually just the word difficult, wearing a disguise. The other thing it taught me, the thing I've thought about more the older I get, is that most of the important things in life aren't the big dramatic moments. They're the small ones, the quiet ones. The ones that happen at 3 in the morning under portable lights in a frozen forest while the war goes on around you? Jimmy Price died in Beatrice. That's a fact. The round that came through killed him instantly, and there was nothing any of us could do about it. He was 17 years old, and he died in a tank in France. And that's his story. But the rest of us lived. We lived partly because we got lucky, but we also lived because Bill Haynes refused to accept that Beatrice was finished. He gave us a tank back. He gave us a chance. And over the next 5 months, as we pushed across Europe, Beatrice protected us through situations where we should have died, and we made it home. I don't know if Haynes ever thought about it that way. I don't know if he ever tallied up how many men he might have saved by refusing to let one tank stay dead. Maybe he did. Maybe he didn't. Maybe it was just another repair job to him, just another problem to solve. But to me, to Marcus, to Tommy, to Frank, to all the other guys who crewed Beatrice after that night, it was more than that. It was proof that one person can change things. I've told this story before, but never publicly. Told my wife once, back in the 50s, and she listened and didn't say much, but I think she understood. Told my son in the 70s when he was trying to decide whether to go to college or take a job that seemed safer. Told my grandson a few years ago when he was talking about starting a business and everyone was telling him it was too risky. But I've never told it like this, never laid it all out, never tried to explain exactly what happened and what it meant. Partly because I didn't think anyone would care. Partly because it felt too small to matter. A tank got repaired. So what? Tanks got repaired all the time during the war. Mechanics worked miracles every day. What made this one special? I guess what makes it special is that I was there. I saw it happen. I watched impossibility become reality over the course of 12 hours, and it changed how I saw the world. And now I'm 92 years old, and I'm running out of time to tell people about it. And I decided I didn't want this story to die with me. If you're still listening to my story, I'd appreciate if you'd hit that like button and subscribe. It means these memories won't be forgotten. There's a photograph somewhere, taken by one of the infantry guys who was guarding us that night. It shows Beatrice with her hatches open, portable lights set up around her, and you can see me and Tommy and Lieutenant Haynes working. The photo's grainy, black and white, and you can't make out much detail, but I've looked at it 1,000 times. I got a copy of it from the National Archives in the 90s after I filed a request. It's in a frame on my desk now, and sometimes I just sit and look at it and try to remember exactly how cold it was that night. Exactly what Haynes said when he first climbed into the burned-out interior of Beatrice. Exactly how it felt when that engine coughed to life. The details fade. That's the thing nobody tells you about getting old. The big moments stay pretty clear, but the small details, the texture of things, that go soft around the edges. I remember the shape of that night, but I can't always remember the exact words people said or the precise sequence of events. I remember the feeling of disbelief, of exhaustion, of gradual hope, as we realized Haynes might actually pull it off. But the specifics blur together. What doesn't blur is the lesson. The lesson's as sharp now as it was then. Don't accept what other people tell you is impossible. Don't let anyone tell you something can't be done until you've tried it yourself. Don't confuse difficulty with impossibility. And don't underestimate what one determined person can accomplish when they refuse to give up. That's what Bill Haynes taught me in December of 1944. He wasn't trying to teach me anything. He was just trying to fix a tank. But I learned it anyway, and I've carried it with me for 79 years, and now I'm passing it on to whoever's listening to this. The war ended in May of 45. Beatrice survived. So did Marcus and Tommy and me. We came home, got on with our lives, and tried to forget most of what we'd seen. You don't forget, not really, but you learn to live with it. You box it up, put it away, and only take it out when you have to. I took Beatrice out of the box today. Took the memory of that night, that impossible repair, that insane lieutenant who refused to accept reality, and I decided to share it. I'm not sure why today, why now. Maybe because I'm 92 and I know I don't have many more chances. Maybe because I had that dream last week and woke up thinking about it and couldn't stop. Maybe because I finally understand what I learned that night and I want other people to know it too. The world tells you no a lot. It tells you that things are too hard, too expensive, too dangerous, too complicated. It tells you to accept limitations, to be realistic, to understand that some things just can't be done. And most of the time, the world is right. Most of the time, the limitations are real, and accepting them is the smart move. But not always. Sometimes, the limitation is just a story we've all agreed to tell each other. Sometimes the impossible is just the difficult with better marketing. Sometimes all it takes is one person who looks at the problem differently, who has been preparing without anyone knowing, who has the right parts and the right knowledge and the right stubborn insanity to say, "I can fix this." Lieutenant Bill Haynes fixed Beatrice in 12 hours. He took a tank that everyone, including me, had already written off, and he brought her back to life. He did it with scrounged parts and portable lights, and 2 exhausted tankers who barely knew which end of a wrench to hold. He did it in the cold, in the dark, in a combat zone, with German artillery audible in the distance. He did it because he believed he could. And that belief, that refusal to accept the obvious answer, saved lives. Maybe saved my life. Definitely gave me a second chance that I wouldn't have had otherwise. I don't know if Haynes ever knew that. I don't know if anyone ever told him. I hope somebody did. I hope he went home after the war and had a good life and knew that what he did mattered. But I'll never know for sure. What I do know is that I'm here at 92 telling this story because of what he did that night. I'm here because he refused to accept impossible. And if you're listening to this, if you've stayed with me this far, then maybe you needed to hear that too. Maybe you're facing something right now that everyone's telling you can't be done. Maybe you're looking at a problem that seems too big, too complicated, too broken to fix. Maybe you've already accepted the answer, already started planning around the failure. I'm not going to tell you that you can definitely fix it. I'm not going to promise that everything works out if you just believe hard enough. That's not how the world works, and I'm too old to lie about it. But I am going to tell you that maybe, just maybe, the thing everyone says is impossible is actually just difficult. Maybe it just needs someone who's been preparing in ways nobody noticed. Maybe it needs someone willing to work through the night. Maybe it needs someone stubborn enough to try. Maybe it needs you. That's what I learned from Bill Haynes and Beatrice and that impossible night in December of 1944. That's what I've carried with me for 79 years. That's what I wanted to tell you before I run out of time. If you're still listening to my story, I'd appreciate if you'd hit that like button and subscribe. It means these memories won't be forgotten. I still think about Jimmy Price sometimes. 17 years old, died in the first minute of the fight, before any of us even knew what hit us. Never got to see Beatrice get rebuilt. Never got to know that the tank he died in would go on to fight for 5 more months and bring the rest of us home. There's an unfairness to that I've never been able to resolve. Jimmy was the one who didn't make it, but the rest of us got the benefit of Haynes's impossible repair. We got to keep fighting in a tank that should have been abandoned. We got to come home. Jimmy just got a grave in France and a letter sent to his parents in Missouri. I went to visit that grave in 2003. My wife had died the year before, and I wanted to go back to Europe one more time. Wanted to see some of the places I'd been during the war. Wanted to see if they looked the way I remembered. They didn't. Everything was smaller, quieter, more peaceful than it had been in my memory. The forests where we'd fought were just forests now. The villages we'd gone through were just villages. The war had been scrubbed away, cleaned up, turned into history, but the graves were still there. Row after row of white crosses in perfectly maintained cemeteries, and Jimmy Price was one of them. I found his grave, stood there for a while, and tried to think of what to say. Tried to explain to him that Beatrice had survived, that we'd made it, that his death hadn't been meaningless even though it felt that way sometimes. I didn't know what to say then, and I don't know what to say now. How do you explain to a dead 17-year-old that his death was part of a larger story? That the tank he died in became something more than just another knocked-out Sherman? How do you make that sound like anything other than hollow justification? I couldn't then. I can't now. What I can say is that I've tried to live in a way that justified the second chance Haynes gave me. I've tried to be the kind of person who doesn't accept impossible when there's even the smallest chance that it's actually just difficult. I've tried to pass that lesson on to my kids and my grandkids. I've tried to make Jimmy's death mean something by not wasting the life I got to keep living. I don't know if that's enough. Probably isn't. But it's what I have. The thing about being 92 is that you start thinking about what you're leaving behind. Not possessions, I mean. Those don't matter much. I'm thinking about stories, about lessons, about the things you learned that might be useful to someone else. This story, this memory of Lieutenant Bill Haynes and the tank that should have stayed dead, this is part of what I'm leaving behind. It's not a story about heroism, not really. Haynes didn't charge a machine gun nest or save someone from a burning building. He just fixed a tank, but he fixed it when everyone else had given up. He fixed it in a time frame that shouldn't have been possible. He fixed it because he'd been preparing for that moment without knowing when it would come, and when it did come, he was ready. That's worth remembering. That's worth telling. That's worth whatever time I have left to share it. I don't have many stories left to tell. I've lived a long time, seen a lot of things, but most of it doesn't feel important enough to burden other people with. Most of it is just the daily accumulation of years, the slow addition of memories that don't add up to much. But this story is different. This story has something in it that I think matters. Something about human determination, about refusing to accept the obvious answer, about the way one person can change things, even when the situation seems hopeless. I want people to know about Bill Haynes. I want people to know what he did. I want people to understand that somewhere in America, probably long dead now, there was a man who could rebuild a combat tank in 12 hours, and he did it because he saw a problem that needed solving, and he didn't care that everyone said it was impossible. If you're still listening to my story, I'd appreciate if you'd hit that like button and subscribe. It means these memories won't be forgotten. The sun's going down outside my window. I've been talking for a long time now, and I'm tired. That's another thing about being 92. You get tired easily. Your energy doesn't last the way it used to, but I'm glad I told this story. I'm glad I took the time to go through it, to remember the details I could remember, to try to explain what it meant. I'm glad that now, maybe, someone else knows about Lieutenant Bill Haynes and what he did in a frozen forest in France in December of 1944. I don't know how much longer I have. Could be days, could be years. At 92, you stop pretending you know. You just take each day as it comes and try to make it count. But I know this: when I'm gone, this story will still be here. This memory of an impossible repair and the man who did it will survive me. And maybe, somewhere down the line, someone will hear it who needs to hear it. Someone who's been told that what they want to do is impossible. Someone who's facing a problem that seems unsolvable. Someone who needs to know that sometimes the difference between impossible and possible is just one person who refuses to accept the obvious answer. If that person is you, if you're listening to this and thinking about giving up on something, I want you to remember Bill Haynes. Remember that he took a burned out, shot up, supposedly dead tank and brought it back to life in 12 hours. Remember that he did it with scrounged parts and stubborn determination and a refusal to accept reality. And then I want you to ask yourself, what's your Beatrice? What's the thing you've been told can't be fixed, can't be done, can't be saved? What's the problem you've already accepted as unsolvable? Maybe it is unsolvable. Maybe everyone's right and you should move on. But maybe they're wrong. Maybe all it takes is someone willing to try. Maybe all it takes is you. I've been carrying this story for 79 years, and now I'm setting it down. I'm leaving it here for whoever needs it. Take it. Use it. Let it change how you see the word impossible. Because here's what I learned in that frozen forest in December of 1944. Watching a thin man with dirty glasses rebuild a tank that should have stayed dead. The rules aren't as fixed as they seem. The limitations aren't as real as they feel. And sometimes, just sometimes, one person with enough determination can change everything. That's what Bill Haynes taught me. That's what Beatrice proved. And that's what I wanted to tell you before I run out of time. Thank you for listening to an old man's memories. Thank you for staying with me through this long story. Thank you for helping make sure that what Bill Haynes did doesn't get forgotten. It mattered then. It matters now. And I hope maybe it matters to you too. The light's almost gone outside. It's getting dark. Time for me to rest. But Beatrice's story, Bill Haynes' story, that doesn't rest. That lives on as long as someone remembers it, as long as someone tells it, as long as someone learns from it. I've done my part. I've told it. Now it's yours. Don't let it die. Don't let impossible be the last word. And don't ever forget that sometimes, just sometimes, 12 hours is all it takes to turn death into life. That's what I learned. That's what I'm leaving behind. That's my story. Continue estendendo a roteiro, Wenfriths. I stayed in touch with Marcus for almost 40 years after the war ended. We'd write letters, exchange Christmas cards, talk on the phone maybe once or twice a year. He settled in a small town outside Pittsburgh, worked in a steel mill, raised 3 daughters. Good man, steady. The kind of person who showed up when he said he would and did what he said he'd do. We talked about that night a few times over the years, not often. It wasn't something we brought up casually. But every now and then, usually late at night when one of us had called the other about something else, the conversation would drift that direction. I remember one call, must have been in the early 80s. Marcus had just retired from the mill, and he was feeling reflective. We talked for maybe an hour about nothing important, and then he said, "You ever wonder why Haynes had all those parts ready?" I'd thought about it, of course. "Scrounge them," he said. "Been collecting them for weeks." "Yeah, but why?" Marcus said. "Why was he doing that? Nobody told him to. Wasn't his job to stockpile parts from knocked-out tanks? He was supposed to fix what came to him, move on to the next one." I didn't have an answer then. Still don't, not really. But I've developed a theory over the years. I think Haynes saw something the rest of us didn't see. I think he understood, maybe from experience or maybe just from intuition, that the book answer wasn't always the right answer. The Army manual said a tank with major damage went to the rear, got evaluated, got repaired over days or weeks at a depot facility. But Haynes knew that sometimes you didn't have days or weeks. Sometimes you needed that tank now, needed it back in the fight immediately, and the book answer meant good men died because they didn't have the armor support they needed. So he prepared, he collected parts, he studied systems, he figured out what could be salvaged from destroyed tanks and what couldn't. He built up a mental database of repairs and workarounds and shortcuts. And when the moment came, when we showed up with Beatrice burned and broken, he was ready. That's not luck, that's preparation meeting opportunity. That's someone who saw a need and decided to fill it before anyone even knew the need existed. Marcus understood that. He said on that phone call, "Haynes saved more than just us, you know. How many other tanks you think he kept running? How many other crews got to come home because he refused to send their tank to the rear?" I didn't know, still don't. Haynes didn't keep records, didn't brag, didn't make sure people knew what he'd accomplished. He just did the work and moved on to the next problem. But I'd bet money, if I were a betting man, that Beatrice wasn't the only impossible repair Haynes pulled off during the war. I'd bet he saved dozens of tanks, maybe more. I'd bet there are men who came home, who had kids and grandkids, who lived full lives, who have no idea they owe it all to a thin man with dirty glasses who refused to accept the book answer. That's the thing about people like Haynes. Their impact spreads out in ways they never see, touches lives they never meet, changes outcomes they never know about. He fixed Beatrice, and that meant Marcus and Tommy and I survived situations we might not have survived otherwise. And that meant we came home and had families and built lives. And our kids had kids, and those kids had kids. And now there are dozens of people walking around who exist because Bill Haynes refused to let one tank stay dead. He probably never thought about it that way. Probably just saw a problem, saw a solution, and executed. But the ripples went out anyway. Kept going. Are still going now. That's worth thinking about when you're deciding whether to try something difficult. You're not just doing it for yourself. You're doing it for everyone who comes after, everyone who benefits from your refusal to accept the easy answer. You're changing the future in ways you'll never see. Haynes changed my future that night. Changed Marcus's, changed Tommy's, changed Frank's. Changed all the replacement crew members who climbed into Beatrice over the next 5 months. Changed their families, their kids, everyone they touched. One impossible repair, 12 hours. Ripples that are still spreading 79 years later. If you're still listening to my story, I'd appreciate if you'd hit that like button and subscribe. It means these memories won't be forgotten. Tommy died in 1997, heart attack. He was 71 years old, working in his garden, and he just dropped. His wife found him an hour later. Marcus called to tell me, and we spent a long time on the phone that night, not saying much, just being present for each other. At the funeral, Tommy's son came up to me. He was maybe 40 years old, looked just like Tommy, had the same quiet way of talking. He said his father had told him about Beatrice, about that night in the forest, about Haynes. Dad said it was the most amazing thing he ever saw, Tommy's son told me. Said he never understood how one man could do what Haynes did. Said it changed how he thought about problems for the rest of his life. I'd never known Tommy felt that way. We'd talked about that night a few times over the years, but Tommy wasn't the type to get philosophical about things. He was practical, straightforward, but apparently he'd carried the same lesson I had, kept it with him, thought about it when he faced difficult situations. His son said, "Dad told me that story when I was trying to decide whether to start my own business. Everyone was telling me it was too risky, that I should play it safe, keep my job at the factory. Dad said, Remember what I told you about Lieutenant Haynes? Sometimes the impossible is just the difficult with better marketing. If you think you can do it, try. The son had started the business. It had succeeded. He'd built something good, employed 40 people, supported his family, and it all traced back to Tommy remembering Bill Haynes and passing that lesson forward. That's how it works. That's how one man's determination in 1944 echoes forward into the 1990s and beyond. Haynes probably never met Tommy's son, never knew he existed, but his actions that night changed that man's life anyway. I wonder sometimes how many other lives Haynes changed without knowing. How many other veterans went home and told their kids about the crazy lieutenant who could fix anything? How many other people made different choices, took different risks, achieved different things because they'd seen proof that impossible wasn't always impossible? No way to know. The ripples spread too far, touched too many shores. But I know they're out there, those echoes of one night in December. I know because I've seen them in my own life, in my own family, in the choices my kids and grandkids have made. My daughter's a surgeon. When she was in medical school, she told me about a case where everyone said the patient was too far gone, the damage too extensive. She scrubbed in anyway, spent 14 hours in surgery, and saved a life everyone else had written off. When I asked her why she'd tried when everyone said it was hopeless, she said, "You told me about that tank, Dad. About Lieutenant Haynes. I figured if he could bring a dead tank back to life in 12 hours, I could at least try to save one patient." She did. That patient lived another 20 years, saw grandchildren born, lived a full life. All because of a story I told my daughter about a night in France. All because of what Bill Haynes did. The ripples keep spreading. Marcus died in 2006, lung cancer. He'd smoked for 60 years, and it finally caught up with him. I went to the funeral, gave a eulogy, told stories about our time together, told the story about Beatrice, about Haynes, about that impossible night. After the funeral, one of Marcus's granddaughters came up to me. She was maybe 25, studying to be an engineer. She said Marcus had told her about Haynes too, had used that story to encourage her when she was struggling with difficult coursework. Grandpa said if Lieutenant Haynes could rebuild a tank in 12 hours with scrounged parts and no sleep, I could figure out differential equations, she told me. He said the only difference between impossible and difficult is how much you're willing to try. She'd graduated top of her class, was working for a company that designed renewable energy systems, was helping solve problems that mattered, changing the world in small ways, and it all connected back to that night in the forest. I told her about Haynes, what little I knew, told her I wished I could find him, thank him, let him know what he'd started. She said she'd try to help me look, but we never found anything. Haynes had disappeared into history, just another veteran among millions, and whatever he'd done after the war, he'd done it quietly. But his lessons survived, his examples survived. The proof he'd provided, that impossible could be beaten with preparation and determination and stubborn refusal to quit, that survived. That's what I'm leaving behind. Not just the memory of one repair, but the lesson it taught. The permission it gave us to try things everyone said couldn't be done. The courage it inspired to face difficult problems without automatically accepting defeat. That's Haynes's legacy, whether he knew it or not. That's what I want people to understand. One night, one impossible task, one man who refused to accept the obvious answer, and ripples that are still spreading 79 years later, touching lives he never met, inspiring choices he never knew about, changing the world in ways he never saw. That's the power of refusing to accept impossible. That's what one person can do. I've spent a lot of time over the years thinking about what made Haynes different. What gave him the confidence to look at a burned-out tank and say, "I can fix this"? What made him spend weeks scrounging parts that most people would have ignored? What drove him to work through the night in the cold, when he could have just shrugged and moved on to the next job? I don't think it was ego. Haynes wasn't trying to prove he was smarter than everyone else. I don't think it was ambition either. He wasn't angling for promotion or recognition. The Bronze Star came months later, and I got the sense he was almost embarrassed by it. I think it was something simpler. I think Haynes just hated waste. He saw tanks getting written off that still had functional systems. He saw parts getting left in fields when they could be salvaged. He saw opportunities being missed because the book said to do things a certain way, even when that way was inefficient, and he couldn't stand it. So he did something about it, quietly, without asking permission, without making a big deal about it. He just started collecting parts, figuring out systems, preparing for a moment that might never come. And when the moment came, he was ready. That's a lesson too. You can't wait until the crisis hits to start preparing. By then, it's too late. Haynes was ready to fix Beatrice because he'd been getting ready for months, maybe years. He'd been studying, collecting, learning, practicing. When we showed up with a dead tank, he already knew what to do because he'd thought through the problem long before it existed. I've tried to live that way. Tried to prepare for problems before they arrive, to learn things before I need them, to be ready for opportunities that might never come. Doesn't always work. Sometimes you can't prepare. Sometimes life hits you with something completely unexpected, and all you can do is react. But when you can prepare, when you can see what's coming and get ready for it, that's when you have power. That's when you can do things other people think are impossible. Haynes understood that. He lived it. And when his moment came, when we needed him, he delivered. If you're still listening to my story, I'd appreciate if you'd hit that like button and subscribe. It means these memories won't be forgotten. I went back to that forest once more in 2012. I was 87 years old then, and I knew it would be the last time. The travel was getting too hard. My body wasn't cooperating the way it used to, and I wanted to see it one more time before I couldn't. My grandson came with me. Good kid. He was 30 years old then, working as a teacher, and he'd taken 2 weeks off to help me make the trip. We flew to Paris, rented a car, drove out to the area where I thought the forest had been. Everything was different. The roads had changed. The villages had grown. The forest itself looked nothing like I remembered, but I found a spot that felt right, a clearing that might have been the clearing, and we stopped there. My grandson helped me out of the car, and I stood there for a long time, just looking, trying to see it the way it had been, trying to remember where Beatrice had sat, where we'd set up the lights, where Haynes had worked through the night. I couldn't see it. The memory was there, clear as ever, but the physical place had moved on. The war was ancient history. The clearing was just a clearing. Nothing marked what had happened there. No monument, no plaque, nothing to indicate that something impossible had occurred in that spot 68 years earlier. My grandson asked me what I was thinking about. I told him about that night. Told him the whole story, standing there in the clearing that might have been the place or might have been somewhere else entirely. Told him about Haynes, about Beatrice, about watching impossibility turn into reality over the course of 12 hours. He listened, didn't interrupt, and when I finished, he was quiet for a while. Then he said, "Do you think Lieutenant Haynes is still alive?" I'd wondered that myself. Haynes would have been around 110 by then if he'd survived. Possible, but not likely. Probably not, I said, but I don't know for sure. I wish you could find him, my grandson said. I wish you could tell him what his work meant. Me too, I said. We stood there a while longer, and then my grandson said something that surprised me. He said, "I'm going to tell this story to my students. I'm going to tell them about Lieutenant Haynes and what he did. I'm going to use it when they say something's too hard or they can't do it." I looked at him, and I saw what Haynes had started. I saw the ripples reaching forward another generation. My grandson, who wasn't born until decades after the war, who never met Haynes, who never saw Beatrice, he was going to carry the lesson forward. "That's good," I said. "That's real good." And he has. He's told me about it over the years. Told me how he uses the story in his classroom when students are struggling, how he talks about the difference between impossible and difficult, how he encourages them to prepare for opportunities before they arrive, how he teaches them that one person with enough determination can change things. The ripples keep spreading. I'm 92 now, and I know my time's limited. Could go tomorrow, could last another 5 years. Nobody knows. But what I do know is that the story won't die with me. My grandson's carrying it forward. So is my daughter. So are Marcus's grandkids and Tommy's son, and probably dozens of other people I've told over the years. And now, whoever's listening to this, you're carrying it forward too. That's how good things survive. That's how one man's actions in 1944 can matter in 2026. Not through monuments or plaques or official recognition, through stories, through people remembering and telling others and keeping the lesson alive. Haynes didn't do what he did for glory. He did it because it needed doing. But the glory came anyway, just not the kind you can hang on a wall. The glory came in the form of lives saved, lessons learned, ripples spreading forward through time. That's the best kind of glory, the kind that keeps giving, keeps spreading, keeps mattering. I've had a good life, long life, 80 plus years since that night in the forest, and I've tried to make them count, tried to be worthy of the second chance Haynes gave me, tried to pass forward what he taught me. I don't know if I've succeeded. That's not for me to judge. but I know I've tried. I know I've told the story when it needed telling. I know I've encouraged people to attempt things they thought were impossible. I know I've done my best to honor what Bill Haynes did that cold December night. And now I'm telling you that impossible isn't always impossible. Telling you that preparation matters. Telling you that one person can change things. Telling you that the rules aren't as fixed as they seem. Telling you that sometimes, just sometimes, 12 hours is all it takes to turn death into life. That's what I learned from Lieutenant Bill Haynes. That's what Beatrice proved. That's what I've carried for 79 years. And that's what I'm leaving behind for you. Don't waste it. Don't ignore it. Don't let impossible be the last word, because somewhere out there, maybe right now, you're facing your own Beatrice. Your own impossible problem. Your own moment where everyone's telling you it can't be done. And maybe they're right, but maybe they're wrong. Maybe all it takes is someone willing to prepare, willing to try, willing to work through the night under portable lights while everyone else sleeps. Maybe all it takes is you. That's what Bill Haynes taught me. That's what I'm teaching you. The rest is up to you. If you're still listening to my story, I'd appreciate if you'd hit that like button and subscribe. It means these memories won't be forgotten. There's one more thing I want to tell you before I finish. Something I've never told anyone before, not even my wife, not even Marcus. After the war ended, after we all came home, I had nightmares for years. Most veterans did. We didn't talk about it much back then. Didn't have the language for it. Didn't have the support systems. You just dealt with it, tried to function, hoped it would fade eventually. My nightmares were always the same. I'd be back in Beatrice, and we'd take that hit again, and this time when I tried to get out, I couldn't. The hatch wouldn't open, or my legs wouldn't work, or the smoke was too thick. And I'd be trapped in there, knowing the ammunition was going to cook off, knowing I was going to die, and there was nothing I could do about it. I'd wake up sweating, heart pounding, convinced I was still in that tank. It took years for those nightmares to fade. Even now, at 92, I'll have one every now and then. Not as bad as they used to be, but they're still there, still waiting in the dark parts of my memory. But here's the thing I never told anyone. After that night when Haynes rebuilt Beatrice, after we took her back into combat and kept fighting, the nightmares changed. They didn't stop, but they changed. Now when I dream about being trapped in the burning tank, about knowing I was going to die, Haynes would appear. He'd climb down through the turret with his dirty glasses and his cigarette, and he'd look around at all the damage and he'd say, "I can fix this." And then I'd wake up, not scared anymore, not panicked, just awake, with this sense of calm, this feeling that even the worst situations had solutions if you looked at them the right way. I don't know what that means. I'm not a psychologist. I don't know how the mind works. But I know that Bill Haynes, even in my dreams, even in my worst moments, represented hope. Represented the possibility that broken things could be fixed, that death could be turned into life, that impossible could be beaten. That got me through a lot of hard nights. Still does, on the rare occasions when the nightmares come back. And I think that's maybe the most important thing Haynes gave me. Not just the physical repair of one tank, not just the extra 5 months of protection that kept us alive, but the psychological proof, burned deep into my mind, that no situation was completely hopeless as long as someone was willing to try. That's a powerful thing to carry through life. That's a gift beyond measuring. So if Lieutenant Bill Haynes is somehow still alive, somehow listening to this, I want him to know, thank you. Thank you for fixing Beatrice. Thank you for giving us a second chance. Thank you for teaching me that impossible is just a word, not a fact. And thank you for appearing in my dreams all those years, reminding me that broken things can be fixed if you're willing to do the work. I owe you my life. More than that, I owe you the way I lived my life, the choices I made, the risks I took, the times I refused to accept defeat. All of that traces back to you and what you did in 12 hours in a frozen forest. I hope you had a good life. I hope you came home and were happy. I hope you knew somewhere deep down that what you did mattered. Because it did. It mattered then. It matters now. And it will keep mattering as long as people remember it. The sun's almost down now. I've been talking for a very long time, and I'm tired. More tired than I've been in a while. But it's a good tired. The kind you feel when you've done something that needed doing. I've told this story the way it needed to be told. I've honored Bill Haynes' memory the best way I know how. I've passed forward the lesson he taught me 79 years ago. Now it's up to you. You're the ripple now. You're the one carrying this forward. You're the one who decides whether the lesson lives or dies. Don't let it die. Tell someone about Lieutenant Bill Haynes and the tank that shouldn't have survived. Tell someone about the difference between impossible and difficult. Tell someone that preparation and determination can beat any obstacle. Tell someone that one person can change everything. And then, when you face your own impossible situation, remember that somewhere in France in December of 1944, a thin man with dirty glasses looked at a burned-out tank and said, "I can fix this." And then he did, in 12 hours. With scrounged parts and portable lights and stubborn refusal to accept the obvious answer, he did it. And if he could do that, maybe you can do whatever impossible thing you're facing right now. Maybe you can fix your Beatrice. Maybe you can prove everyone wrong. Maybe you can be the person who refuses to accept defeat. That's what I learned. That's what I'm leaving behind. That's my final message to anyone who's listening. Don't accept impossible. Don't give up when things look hopeless. Don't let the obvious answer be the last answer. Because sometimes, just sometimes, all it takes is one person who's willing to try. Sometimes all it takes is 12 hours. Sometimes all it takes is refusing to accept what everyone else has already accepted. That's what Bill Haynes taught me. That's what I've carried for 79 years. And now at 92 years old, sitting here in the fading light, I'm giving it to you. Take it, use it, pass it forward, and don't let these memories be forgotten. Thank you for listening to an old man talk about a night that changed his life. Thank you for keeping Lieutenant Bill Haynes' memory alive. Thank you for being part of the ripple that started 79 years ago and is still spreading today. The light's gone now. It's dark outside my window. Time for me to rest. But the story lives on. The lesson lives on. The ripples keep spreading. And somewhere, somehow, Bill Haynes' impossible repair in December of 1944 continues to change lives, inspire people, and prove that the word impossible is just a challenge waiting to be beaten. That's what I believe. That's what I know. That's what I'm leaving behind. Don't forget it. And don't let anyone tell you something can't be done until you've tried it yourself. That's the lesson. That's the gift. That's what Bill Haynes gave me and what I'm giving you. Use it well.